So, guys, I am back again. This is actually part two to the earlier video that I made this morning about why dating relationships don't work, and I began to go a little bit more in detail about the main predictors of relationship breakup and marital divorce. And I gave you guys four predictors of marital divorce or relationship breakup because it can apply to whether couples are married or whether they're just dating. But those were contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and um, stonewalling. And I kind of rushed through that video because I actually was headed to my first class of today. So I wasn't able to go into too much detail about for each predictor of relationship breakup. So that's what this video is going to be about. And it's going to be an informal video, so you can relax and get comfortable and unwind. But here we go. So the first one being contempt. And interesting enough, this is the main predictor of relationship breakup. And I am going to Google on my cell phone the exact definition. I gave you guys a definition, my own kind of summarization of what it means, but I will Google contempt and tell you what Google says exactly what it means, because sometimes people understand things differently. So contempt, according to Google, this is Google's definition: the feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, is worthless, or deserving scorn. Also, it says disregard for something that should be taken into account. And then the legal definition of the offense of being disobedient to or disrespectful of a court of law and its officers. So I'm going to focus the definition for contempt on the first two that Google provides. You guys can Google it yourself. It says it there clearly that what contempt is. And the definition that Google provides is pretty much similar to the definition that John Gottman gives us for what he means by contempt in relationships and how it manifests itself during different stages of a relationship, especially in the context of communication. Let me make it clear that these four predictors are basically predictors that happen in the context of communication. And I said before in my video yesterday that that you can tell when a relationship is unhealthy, is at risk for not lasting any longer, simply just by looking at the style of communication, the way people communicate in relationships. Says so much about the quality of that relationship, and basically the success, how successful that relationship is going to be. And so that's, I think, the main important thing to take away is that these predictors are basically signs that the relationship is not going to work, unfortunately. Now, I don't want to sound like the glass is half empty or anything. I just want to give it to you guys straightforward. And I will do another follow-up video, perhaps, to kind of get you guys a little bit more hope, I guess, than this video provides, because it's not all bad. Just because those things, may be present in a relationship doesn't necessarily mean the relationship is going to end. So I will do another video, which I am going to make this a video series. It's going to be free, available on my website at danielleleash.com. as well as my YouTube channel, YouTube backslash author D Leach. So you'll be able to get the whole entire complete series for this blog about dating and relationships and how you can spot these signs that your relationship is not on the right path, and how you could work with your partner and possibly a therapist like myself or a psychologist, which I am training to be, to work through these issues with your partner and somehow be able to get back on the path of a healthy relationship. Because when these things are present in a relationship, contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling, you better watch out, especially when it comes to contempt. And going back to Google's definition, just a whole disregard for another human being, I think is worth talking about for a few minutes. Because sometimes people can get in their feelings, I think, and you forget, like, you say you love a person and you're with someone, and this is, the person you're destined to spend the rest of your life with. However, you don't treat them as such. Somewhere down the line, things begin to change. The way that you talk to them begins to change. The things that you communicate to them, the things that you say to this person begin to change. How you make them feel changes. And it's not good. And I'm trying to unlock my phone. And I hate it when I don't do it right. And it's like, try again, try again, try again, try again. But now it's telling me I wait 30 seconds. But I read the definition earlier, and it's basically saying that just having a disregard, not taking into consideration something that is important to another individual, your partner. If something is, important to your partner, and your partner brings it to your awareness, but you just act like it's insignificant, and please understand that when I'm speaking in specific terms. I'm not just talking about, a general, oh, I want to go shopping, which pair of shoes should I get, or something like that. But I'm talking about something of significance, like something that is a pressing concern. And the partner just shows an absolute disregard for, the other person. Okay, so I'll read the definition again. Disregard for something that should be taken into account. Something as significant as a phone call, a missed phone call. That can be significant in a sense. That should be taken into account, like you didn't answer your phone. If a person just kind of blows it off as if it doesn't bother them, so what, I didn't answer my phone, like, big deal. But they see that it's a concern for the other person, then that can be a problem. And sometimes this can be a little bit confusing because there is some gray area, not saying that everything a person says is a concern for them should necessarily be like a major concern in a relationship. But you guys get the idea that if something should be taken into account and a person just has absolutely no respect, no concern for, what it is, that's contemptuous behavior. That's behavior showing that you just don't give a fuck. Like you don't care. And at that point in a relationship, if, a partner, if you begin to notice signs where a person is acting as if they just don't care, maybe they don't care. If a person doesn't care, and that can be a difficult thing, and that's the reason why these are signs of divorce and relationship breakup. Because if you're at this point in your relationship where you just have no regard and you do not care, think about that. You do not care, yet you're still in the relationship. You're almost doing a disservice to yourself, and you're not being true to yourself. Because if you don't care about a thing or a person in a relationship, yet you're still involved, why are you there? You have to ask yourself, like, why are you even involved in this person's life if you don't care? What is keeping you around this person for someone you don't care about? That is strange, I think, for people to even live with another person that they just don't care about. It's either you care or you don't care. You care or you don't care. There's no in between. You don't, okay, on Mondays I care about you and what you have to say, but on Tuesdays, I don't care. I think, like I said, you either care or you don't care, and that's when it becomes a problem, I think, in a relationship. And sometimes we think that our actions just are our actions. That's just, me, and it doesn't affect my partner. Or even if it does affect my partner, I'm doing this to get back at them, to show them, I don't care. They make me feel a certain kind of way, so I'm going to make them feel the same way and show them that I don't care. Understand whatever you do to your partner, you're doing to yourself, because you are in a relationship with your partner. Whatever happens in the relationship affects both of you, and especially if you're living together. So to pretend as if, you don't care about what the person does, you can just go on and live your life not caring, I think that's not realistic, and you're not being true to yourself by pretending that you don't care. And have to ask yourself, what does that communicate to my partner? If I'm communicating, signs to show that I don't care about this person, I haven't called them to check on them to see how they're doing. Anything could have happened to that person, and even if you guys live together, but you're apart from each other during the day, because you have school or work, and you haven't called to check on the person to see, hi, how are you doing, what's going on. So much can happen in a person's life in a matter of minutes, in a matter of seconds, and even hours. And so thinking or having the idea like, I don't care, so I'm not going to call them. I'm not going to call them. I'm not going to, check on them to see what's going on. I think that does a lot of damage to the relationship. That is a sign of contempt in a relationship, to just show that you have absolute no regard for the next person and how they feel, and what they're experiencing, in the moment. Because if you did, you would call, And like I said, when I'm going down and breaking down these different predictors of divorce, I'm not really getting into the cause of why someone may feel contempt, because there are different reasons, of course, why a person may get to the point where they say they don't care, or they feel that they don't care, and then they show to the other person that they don't care. So that's another video, and I'll get to that. This video is just focusing on these predictors so you guys can get an idea, like, if these things are present in your life, in your relationship with your partner, it's like warning signs. If you say, because you hear it so often in dating relationships, or I found the right one, we're going to get married, this is the person that God has sent for me in my life. People say that so often, and sometimes it doesn't manifest itself in that way when you have problems in a relationship, because how you solve problems in relationships also is a predictor, in my opinion, of whether or not the relationship is going to last or is going to fail. So given that you have signs of or these predictors that the relationship is not going well. It's how you go forward with dealing with those things and addressing those things in the relationship. Because going back to contempt, if you are in a relationship and you're showing that you don't care, yet you know deep down inside you do care about a person, then I think it's best to check yourself, take some time with yourself and ask yourself, why am I, giving this person the impression that I don't care? And how is that impacting my relationship with this person? How is that impacting trust? Because when things go wrong in a relationship, one of the first things that comes up is trust. Trust is important. It has to be trust in a relationship for it to last and for it to be a healthy one. And if the trust is threatened because, there's this impression that a person doesn't care or they're just, doing them, they're not really committed to the relationship itself, things are going to go wrong in that relationship. There are going to be more problems surfacing in the relationship based on the lack of trust and insecurity that comes about as a result. So, for the person in a relationship that is showing the other person that they don't care and how much they don't care, yet deep down inside they know, I love this person. You have to make a decision and ask yourself, do I want to be with this person? If the answer is yes, then something has to change. Something has to change. And that something could be within you, yourself, or it can be with the other person, or both of you. But something has to change. And the longer the relationship goes on without the problem being addressed, the worse it's going to get. And I think that's where you have situations where you have problems that boil over from a dating relationship into a marriage, or even from one relationship to the next. So oftentimes people think the solution to one relationship basically is to end that one and go into another one, and they find themselves, damn, I had the same problem with the last girl with this, Like, we used to argue over the same thing. Why am I having the same argument in a new relationship? And sometimes you have to ask yourself, is it me? Because if you're carrying the same problem from one relationship to another, then it is you, possibly. Or it could be the fact that you just attract the same kind of people in your life. Either way, you have to own part responsibility for the problem in their relationship. Because nothing is going to ever change. On the other hand, if you are in a relationship and you're with someone new and you're having new problems that you have never experienced before in previous relationships with other people, then there's a strong chance that it's possibly that other person. Because if you have experienced dating with different people and you've never, let's say, experienced a person cheating on you before, or you've never experienced, let's say in your current relationship, all you do is argue, all you do is fight. And there's this constant feeling that, you don't feel appreciated, or you don't feel like you cared for. But you didn't feel that way in previous relationships, then that's also a sign that it's possibly the other person. It could strongly be the other person. This is why it's important to, if you are experiencing problems in a relationship, to get hooked up into counseling with not just any counselor. Take my word for it. It has to be one who is right for you. Being a counselor myself, I know that not every counselor is the perfect fit for every client. So you, as a client, you have to, a person that is seeking to better themselves and to improve their life and their relationships with other people, you have to first, ask yourself what it is that you want to work on in therapy. But I'll create another video for that about how you can work through these issues that are coming up in your relationship. And these are like warning signs, you guys. John Gottman, he refers to it as the predictors, the four horsemen. But I would definitely say that these are warning signs. And so moving on along to the next one, criticism. Criticism is a big one because I think we are all guilty of this. When something doesn't go right, what do? You complain. You nitpick. You tell the other person, I don't like that you're leaving your shoes in the middle of the floor. I don't like the fact that you don't put this toilet seat down. I don't like the fact that you don't wash dishes. I don't like the fact that you don't buy me anything. Just criticism, 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 complain, complain, complain. That's what criticism is. You find something that's wrong in the other person specifically, or something that they are doing or not doing, and you bring it to their attention and you criticize. Now, I must be clear because there is some gray area here. It's not to say that if there is something wrong in your relationship that you don't make note of it and you don't say, hey, I called your phone and you didn't answer. I sent you a text and you didn't reply. So you're confronting the issue. Confrontation is important when there's something wrong, because if you don't confront certain issues, you're just going to come back up and resurface. And those feelings that you have surrounding those issues are only going to grow worse and stronger. So definitely confront the issue. But criticism in a relationship, because understand that these four predictors are just exactly that, predictors and warning signs. They're behaviors, but they're things that basically, I'm not going to say are necessarily preventable, because at the point that they manifest themselves, that's just what they are. I mean, they are real, and they can cause damage huge damage in a relationship. And so by me, making note of what they are and describing them in this video, it's just, I'm not saying, okay, if you're doing this in your relationship, just stop it, just don't do it. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying these are warning signs, and that you and your partner need to talk about it and need to figure out why is it happening and how you can address it. Because I think the fact that we're human beings, these things are prone to happening in relationships. But it's just important to be aware, I think, when it's happening. And so, like I said again, it's not so much saying, okay, you're doing these things, so you need to stop. Just be aware. Be aware of when it's happening. Be aware of when you are being contemptuous in a relationship and having an attitude like you don't care, especially if your intention, let me be clear, if your intention is to save the relationship. You definitely want to be aware of that. But if your intention is just to say, I don't care about that, I really don't care, and I don't care about the direction of where this goes, because I'm just my own person, living my life, and I don't care. If you really do not care, hey, those things are going to continue anyway in the relationship. So I don't have to tell you to keep doing it. It's going to keep happening anyway if you don't care. But if you do care, because let me be clear. know if I said it right correctly. But if you don't care, those things are going to happen, continue happening anyway. If you do care, however, you're going to be more mindful of when those things are happening and what leads up to those things in a relationship. So, criticism. And talk about criticism for a minute, because criticism, this one predictor and manifestation of, a relationship problem usually happens as a result of the others in the relationship. The other predictors, I meant to say. So when a person is criticizing, usually they're criticizing in response to the other person being contemptuous. They're criticizing in response to someone being stonewalling, which I'll cover next, towards the end. So it's usually the criticism is in response to something else. But regardless, just being aware of the criticism, the remarks that you're making. Because no one wants to be in a relationship with someone that always nitpicks. It's one thing that to be a person in a relationship that you're really concerned about the other person, so you want to see that person improve. You want to see better for that person. Let's say that person uses drugs or is an alcoholic, and you want to see that person achieve their goals and become successful one day. Let's say the goal is to be a business owner. But you also see how they have this addiction to drugs or a spending problem or gambling problem, and you know that is kind of contradictory to what their goals are. Then if you make a note of it and you tell that person, this is how I feel about you drinking, that is expressing concern. And sometimes it's all in how you do it and when you do it. Granted, usually when a person has a drinking problem or an addiction in a relationship, the other partner who is affected by it, almost it's very rare that they come to them and say, "Hi, Billy. I love you so much. And I noticed that you've been drinking a lot. And you hardly spend time with me and the kids. And I don't feel connected to you. I just feel that you're always spaced out, sitting on the couch, watching TV and with your alcohol. And I just don't feel connected. And I don't feel that you care." It rarely ever happens that way. Usually it goes something like this. So, he hasn't made it home yet? I wonder why. I am freaking tired of his drinking. And then when he finally comes home, "You've been drinking. You've been out drinking with your friends. Look at you. I'm tired of this. Just so pathetic. Who wants to be with a drunk person?" And that may be a little bit overboard, but hopefully you guys get the idea that what I'm trying to say is that sometimes when a person, if you're the partner who is frustrated with your partner's drinking, it can get to a point where, you're so frustrated and you're so angry by their behavior and, what's happening. Because if a person is drinking, they're not coherent. They're not aware. I mean, and I think that's a symptom of alcoholism, people, where a person who drinks excessively usually makes excuses for the drinking. They're in so much denial that they don't see it as a problem. It's not a problem for them. Why? Because I'm still alive. I'm breathing. I don't have any medical issues. So how is my drinking a problem? It's not a problem. But for the other person, the person outside looking in can see very clearly on how their behavior changes when they are under the influence versus when they are sober. If you've ever been around a person who drinks excessively, especially if they are a functioning alcoholic, which means that they can function just like you and I. They're almost considered like an average person, so to speak, but yet and still that that there's this problem that they have, that they drink uncontrollably. Like, they can't control how many drinks they have. They can't just go and have one drink, so to speak, or two drinks like an average person. Because two drinks for an average person, I mean, for me, I can have one glass of wine and I'm good. I don't need to have 5 glasses of wine to, I'm not even a drinker like that. So I consider myself like an average person. But for a person where drinking is a problem, they're like, and I think it's important, which is a whole nother video, by the way. But it's important to really know and to understand alcoholism, and that understand that it is a real disease. Alcohol dependency is a disease, guys. Drug addiction is a disease. It is something serious. It goes deeper than just, oh, I like to drink alcohol. It's psychological in nature. It's biological in nature. It's environmental. There's so many factors that play into creating this disease that a person can fall victim to, I think. And it only gets worse the more a person denies that they have an addiction, the worse the addiction grows, because it just gets worse. If you have, let's say, if there's think of it from a biological point of view. If you have a disease, like a medical, physical ailment in your body, right? How do you kill it? You want to kill it early on, right? Because if you don't kill it early on, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, right? Like, there's cancer. Or if you're sick, you want to, make sure that you take care of the cold early on. Otherwise, it could cause your immune system to break down even more, which makes you more susceptible to disease. In the same way, I mean, alcoholism is a serious disease, and it gets worse. And the more a person drinks, and the more they stay in denial, the worse it becomes. And it's scary because I've worked with people who have addictions. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm gonna have to make this video like 2 parts. I'm already at 32 minutes. Didn't realize it, and I'm just only on the second one, on the second predictor, so I have 2 more to cover. So yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely make this a 2-part video. But I've been raised, some important things have been raised in this video, and I'm gonna have